Welcome to The Dig Deep, the show where we take a look at classic movies, comics, games, and tech, and tell you if they can stand the test of time.
We've spoken to the editors of Screen, Comic Find, Giant Bomb, and Tested to find out what media has fundamentally informed their love and affection for the subject matters they cover.
But can those products stand up to a modern audience, or have the ravages of time destroyed these products' ability to inspire? Let's find out! This week, after 2 weeks of bad jokes and worse outtakes, we return Dig Deep to the medium we started with, comic books. Our subject this week is a series that made Comic Vind's Sarah Lima a comic fan in the first place. The 2004-based series, Batgirl Year One.
Written 25 years after the former Batman sidekick was taken off the roster due to the worst back injury you can get, Batgirl Year One explores how the young Barbara Gordon evolved from a tiny firebrand desperate to prove herself to the confident superhero.
But are Barbara's superhero shenanigans enough to turn a non-comic reader onto the medium? Or is Batgirl Year One too rooted in the past to play to a modern audience? Let's take a look.
Yeah.
So the last comic we reviewed on this show was Spider-Man 282, and we found it super cheesy and lame.
Yeah.
Like so stuck in that time period of the early 80s that was impossible to take seriously.
Yeah.
But to my surprise, Batgirl Year One, which granted is a much more modern comic than what we read, is actually pretty cool.
It was.
And actually still holds up and probably would hold up even to a non-comic reader.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it held up for me. It's probably one of the first comics that I read in the entire series for.
That's right. I mean, we had the advantage that we had the whole series in front of us, so we weren't necessarily playing along to the, oh, you just read this issue and then tune in for the next one in 6 months or what. But yeah, the thing with Batgirl Year One that was really compelling is that, unlike that Spider-Man comic, this one is actually telling a story, and kind of a cool one. This comic series basically looks back on her origins as this hyper-intelligent college graduate who seeks to prove herself to the world and especially to her father, and how that specific road leads her down the path of becoming Batgirl.
Right, yeah.
And what works about that series, to me specifically, is that Barbara Gordon wants to prove herself, but she doesn't want to prove herself by becoming Batgirl. Batgirl is something that just happens to her on this journey.
It was a joke.
It essentially gets, she's in over her head. What the comic could have very easily been like consumed by the daddy issues angle. Like, oh, I'm doing this because of you, Gordon. I'm doing this because you wouldn't let me become a cop, and I call my dad by his first name when I'm angry at him.
Would you say she's a strong woman?
Yeah, she's clearly capable.
Yeah.
By no means. But the things that drive her are the frustration that the world around her doesn't take her seriously.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You know, she wants to be taken seriously as a cop, as a computer expert,
as a daughter, too.
And then eventually as a superhero.
Yeah.
She uses the sort of the expectations of, oh, she's just a girl in a costume and a ball, and uses it to fend off the killer Moth, which is one of the dumber superhero villains I have seen in a long time.
It's pretty dumb.
He has a helmet and he fires a gun.
The concept is pretty okay.
Yeah.
Of the villain being able to, essentially, he's the bat signal but for villains.
That's right. That's the whole point. Sort of like the comparative arc. The Killer Moth also totally wants to prove himself and basically become the Batman for villains. Yeah. And that angle sort of disappears. It doesn't really factor into the rest of it.
Well, once he comes in with, what's his name? Firefly kind of comes in. That guy's crazy.
He's a crazier villain, but he's less interesting because he's basically, he's just a violent character.
Yeah,
he's just a crazy guy with a flamethrower.
He just became crazy. I don't know. Was he like a producer? I don't know.
He's like a special effects artist in a studio who...
He just burned this like crazy hot actress.
He wants the snuff film for himself.
Yeah.
Then he like becomes the Firefly and attacks crime lords and the mob bosses. Yeah. To be truth be told, I like the beginning of Batgirl Year One a little more than the end, because the end becomes much more traditional comic book stuff.
Yes, that's true. No,
it's her fighting villains and doing villain stuff instead of sort of the insightful, the looking at her actions and commenting.
Yeah, I really liked when all of a sudden she just completely was raging on everybody. She was like she was having like this sort of self-turmoil period, and she pretty much like made Donald just like run out of her office.
That's right.
When he came on to her.
Assistant librarian Donald.
Donald came in with the right intentions, and then the next day she just turned him down.
Yeah, that's just a lot more interesting than Barbara Gordon sort of diving in head first and coming to grips with it. Most of the comic like interacting with Robin, who's like a lot younger than her, and who like steals a kiss.
No, I know that was
weird.
Like when I first turned the page over, I was like, okay, wow, they actually kiss and she likes him. And then I finally saw her reaction, and she was like, get away, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
because I wanted Robin to get some. I just wanted people to get it on.
He's never gonna get some.
I wanted people to get not when he wears those shorts.
Not when he wears those shorts and those
God damn, those shorts are so short.
Yeah.
And she mentions it. They are self-aware. The writers are self-aware that we probably should not have drawn this character with shorts that short, but yet they still do.
They really should have fixed that.
They need to.
Acrobats wear pants, right?
Yeah, they do.
They wear skin-tight pants, but they're pants.
Maybe
they're pants-ish. They're pants-esque.
Yeah, they're Cirque du Soleil before Cirque du Soleil or something. I don't know. They got inspired by that type of circus, but for the love of God, put pants on.
Yeah.
Do a Wonder Woman.
Do the right thing. Pants on, short. Put on a skirt, whatever have you.
Yeah.
Just come on.
Don't
be crazy.
I'm sick of seeing your bare leg.
You're not swimming.
Chris O'Donnell did not. He wore pants.
Michael Phelps can wear a Speedo because he's swimming in the water. He doesn't go to the store. He doesn't fight crime wearing a Speedo. Well, maybe he does. We haven't played that video yet.
Matthew McConaughey, he can jog with his shirt off if he wants to. But Robin, please, come on. Put some pants on. Choose something.
Yeah.
Grab something.
So in short, Batgirl, your one's pretty cool. Put pants on.
In short, Batgirl's great. Robin, put pants on.
Yeah.
And we're good.
Yeah, that's it from us. But let's talk to the person who inspired this episode in the first place. Comic Vine Sarah Lima joins us to talk to us more about Batgirl Year One. Thanks me, I'm now joined by Comic Vine's Sarah Lima. Sarah,
hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Thank you for making fun of my hand movements.
Thank you.
We're here to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about Batgirl Year One.
Yes.
Steve and I read the comic under your advice, and we just wanted to talk about it with you.
Let's talk.
The one thing that Steve and I noticed, the last comic we read for this show was Amazing Spider-Man, the issue where he got to the black suit.
And it's the issue that was terrible.
It was dumb. It was a dumb, silly, dumb
It was
comic.
very bad.
It was really dumb.
Why was it dumb?
Spider-Man comes across like a total nincompoop.
Total dweeb.
And nothing happens.
Nothing.
It's a comic where nothing happens. On the other hand,
swinging around,
he swings around and
saving a cat out of the tree.
Yeah, it's really dumb.
Did that happen? Because I never read it.
Probably. Sarah, let's get down to brass tacks.
Let's get down to business.
Barbara Gordon is a shorter lady, and you are not necessarily the tallest lady in the world. I'm going to be very delicate and very respectful when I say that.
I am pretty small.
Is that something that you resonated with when you were reading the comics?
Yeah, actually.
Is that like one of the focal points?
Yeah. I was always, like the last person picked in gym class because I was this like tiny little like weakling. so I could never do any cool stuff. So
that was one of the things that attached you, because it's definitely a point that the Barbara Gordon character.
That's why I hit the gym so hard.
That's right, absolutely, and now you're totally pumped.
I am.
But
I can't see these guns, but they're there.
Right. But do you think that those are elements of it, the way that the Barbara Gordon character is portrayed? Do you think those are elements that could still resonate to new comic readers and potential non-comic readers today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not totally out there, right? I mean, the idea of somebody putting on a costume, saving somebody else, and crime fighting is a little bit ridiculous. But the way that Chuck Dixon, who wrote this series, sort of poses it, it doesn't feel like it's totally out there, right? It feels like when you're reading, it's almost like, oh, this could actually happen. Sort of like when you watch Iron Man, you're like, dude, I wish I could be Tony Stark. I wish I could build a freaking robot suit and just fly through the air. The way that they shot that film, you almost believe that maybe, but no. Right? And that's the feeling that I like when I read a comic book. It's not totally out there. That's why I'm not like a huge like Green Lantern person, because it's like, oh, space adventures. I can make a giant fist with my ring. That is not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that Steve and I talked about that was
it's grounded in reality.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to.
Yes.
I couldn't find the words.
The other thing that Steve and I talked about that we noticed is that the comic has a very good sense of place and time, of just its place in terms of comic book history. As you know, it was something that I mentioned to you before we shot this yesterday, that there were constant references to the events of the Killing Joke. There were constant references to just the fate of Barbara Gordon and sort of her future. The Oracle's brought up several times, the place that she would take in comic books.
The mantle that she would take, yeah. What I think we should mention is that Barbara Gordon first came into comic books in, I think, 1967. And in 88, I think it was, the Killing Joke was in 88. So Alan Moore wrote The Killing Joke. In The Killing Joke, Barbara Gordon gets shot and she's crippled from the waist down. She then moves on. She stops being Batgirl, obviously, because she can't really do her job. So she becomes Oracle, and she helps Batman. And actually, if you played Arkham Asylum,
that was where
that's Oracle.
I'm sure most people are familiar with Barbara Gordon from that game. Yeah.
But Oracle sort of helps Batman because she's this computer whiz. She's super smart, but you know she's stuck in a wheelchair, so she still wants to help out. And this was written in 2004, so Barbara Gordon's been in a wheelchair for over 20 years now. But this is sort of set outside of continuity. This is a self-contained story that you can pick up and you can be like, okay, who is Barbara Gordon really? How did she get to where she is now? And that is just one little piece of like what makes Barbara. And I think that's what I like so much about it, is that it alludes to certain things, like you said. It alludes to the Killing Joke and to the fact that she became Oracle later on. But it's still a Batgirl Barbara Gordon story. Right.
It's still this development process, because she changes over the course of this. She's angry at the beginning and frustrated that she can't do these things. She becomes exhilarated by being the Batgirl and getting access to this technology. She then gets in completely over her head when she's teamed up with Black Canary trying to fight that stuff. And then but when the time comes when Killer Moth and Firefly set the Gotham City Police Department on fire, she comes to the challenge and saves and helps Batman and Robin beat those villains, and is offered by Batman a chance to join his cadre and fight crime in a really good scene at the end.
How would you turn that down? Plus he is so hot.
He's pretty hot, and he's rich, and he's very dark. Sarah, that's all we have. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, back to us in another couch. Take it away, me. That's it from us. That's the end of this episode of Dig Deep. Tune in next week where maybe we'll do something with fucking video games. Come on.
Yes, please, let's just do something with video games.
Come on. We get it. We know.
We know.
We're trying.
We're trying hard.
Next week, video games.
I love you guys.
Oh, I thought you were going for a boob.
Nope. You thought wrong.
I was like, that's a good trick. You almost got me.
What? I'm a gentleman.